Tang Taiho was having the worst day of his life. He had overslept again, missed his morning engineering class, and now he was running late for his afternoon lab. His backpack bounced against his back as he rushed across the Seoul National University campus. Books and papers threatened to spill out with each step. The October air was crisp and cold. Other students walked slowly, enjoying the autumn weather, but Taeho had no time to appreciate the orange and red leaves falling around him. Professor Kim had already warned him twice about being late. One more time and he would fail the class. Taeho took a shortcut behind the engineering building. This path was usually empty, which was perfect for his mad dash to the laboratory. He was checking his watch when he heard it. A soft sound, almost like a whisper. He slowed down and looked around. The area behind the building was filled with shadows from the tall trees. Old construction equipment sat covered by tarps. Piles of building materials created dark corners where anything could hide. There it was again, a voice weak and scared. Taeho stopped completely. He had always been curious, sometimes too curious for his own good. His mother always told him that his need to help others would get him in trouble someday. Maybe today was that day. He walked toward the sound. His footsteps crunched on the fallen leaves. Between two large concrete blocks, something moved. At first, Taeho thought it was just shadows playing tricks on his eyes. Then he saw her. The woman was definitely not human. She was tall and thin, much thinner than any person should be. Her skin had a strange pale blue color that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Her arms and legs were longer than normal, and her fingers looked delicate and fragile. But it was her eyes that made Taeho freeze in place. They were large and dark, filled with fear and pain. They were the eyes of someone who had seen terrible things. She was wearing what looked like the remains of a white outfit, but it was torn and dirty. Dark stains covered parts of it. Blood. Taeho realized with horror. The alien woman was hurt. She looked up at him, and Taeho saw her whole body shake with fear. She tried to make herself smaller, pressing back against the concrete wall behind her. "Please," she whispered in Korean that sounded strange but understandable. "Please, shield me." Taeho felt his backpack slide off his shoulder and hit the ground. His books scattered across the leaves, but he did not care. Something inside him, something deep and instinctive, made him move toward her. "Do not be afraid," he said softly, the way he might talk to a scared animal. "I want to help." The alien woman watched him carefully as he came closer. When he was a few steps away, he could see her wounds more clearly. Cuts on her arms looked like they came from medical instruments. Burn marks on her hands were perfectly round, as if someone had pressed hot metal against her skin. Someone had hurt her on purpose. Anger filled Taeho's chest. He had never been a violent person, but seeing this made him want to find whoever had done this and make them pay. "Who did this to you?" he asked. The woman's eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though they looked different from human tears, more like liquid silver. "The hegemony," she said. "They took my people. They said we were just for testing, for science." Her voice broke on the last word. Taeho did not understand what the hegemony was, but he understood pain, he understood fear, and he understood that this woman needed help. "What is your name?" he asked. "Nira," she replied. "I am Taeho. Can you walk, Nira?" She nodded slowly and tried to stand. Her legs shook and she had to lean against the wall for support. Taeho reached out to help her, then stopped. He did not know if touching her might hurt her more. "Is it okay if I help you?" he asked. Nira looked surprised by the question. She nodded again. Taeho gently took her arm. Her skin felt warm but different from human skin, smoother somehow. He helped her stand up straight. "Where did you come from?" he asked. "A place far from here," Nira said. "A ship that travels between stars. I escaped, but they will come looking for me. They always come looking." Fear returned to her eyes. "They cannot find me. If they find me, they will take me back. They will do worse things. Please." I know humans are supposed to be kind. The stories say humans help others, even strangers. Taeho felt the weight of her words. Stories about humans being kind. That meant other aliens knew about Earth, about people. But if that was true, why had no one ever made contact before? Where can you go? He asked. Do you have friends here? Family? Nira shook her head. I know no one on this world. I only came here because I heard humans might help. But maybe the stories are wrong. The hope in her voice was breaking. Taeho thought about his small apartment. He thought about his roommates, Park Jin-woo and Lee Dong-min. He thought about what they would say if he brought home an alien. They would probably think he had lost his mind. Then he looked at Nira again. At her wounds, her fear, her desperate hope that someone might care about her. The stories are not wrong, Taeho said firmly. Come with me. Where? Nira asked. My home. You can rest there. We can figure out what to do next. But your people, will they not be afraid? Taeho smiled for the first time that day. Maybe, but they will help too. That is what humans do. He picked up his scattered books and stuffed them back into his backpack. His lab class was definitely missed now, but somehow that did not seem important anymore. As they walked slowly toward the main campus, Nira staying close to his side, Taeho realized his life had just changed forever. An hour ago, his biggest worry was passing engineering class. Now he was harboring an alien refugee who was running from something called the hegemony. But as he looked at Nira, seeing a little hope return to her dark eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than doing the safe thing. And sometimes the most important moments in life came disguised as the worst days. The walk to Taeho's apartment took 20 minutes. Nira moved slowly and Taeho had to stop several times to let her rest. She kept looking at the sky, as if expecting something to fall from it. They have ships that can see everything, she explained, when Taeho asked why she seemed so nervous. But maybe they think I died in the crash. You crashed here? Taeho asked. My escape pod. It is broken now, hidden in your mountains. I walked for 2 days to reach this place. 2 days. Taeho looked at her wounds again and felt amazed that she had survived. When they reached his apartment building, Nira stared up at it with wonder. It was just a normal student housing complex, nothing special. But to her, it seemed incredible. So many humans live together in peace, she said. My people always said this was impossible. Too many minds in one place should create chaos. Sometimes it does, Taeho said with a small laugh. You should hear my neighbors when they argue about music. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. Nira had to hold the railing tightly, but she made it. At the door, Taeho stopped. My roommates might be surprised, he warned her. But they are good people. He opened the door and immediately heard voices from the living room. Jinwoo and Dongmin were playing video games as usual. Taeho, you are late again, Jinwoo called out. Professor Kim called looking for you. I have a situation, Taeho called back. He helped Nira into the apartment. She looked around with curiosity at their simple furniture, their television, their pile of textbooks on the table. Jinwoo appeared in the doorway, ready to make a joke. The words died in his throat when he saw Nira. His mouth fell open. Dongmin, he called in a shaky voice. You need to see this. Dongmin came running, then stopped so quickly he almost fell over. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the video game still playing in the background. Is she? Jinwoo started. An alien, yes, Taeho said. Her name is Nira. She needs help. Alien, Dongmin repeated slowly. A real alien. In our apartment. I am sorry to disturb you, Nira said in her careful Korean. I do not wish to cause problems. The sound of her voice seemed to wake up Jinwoo and Dongmin. They looked at each other, then at Taeho, then back at Nira. She is hurt, Taeho said. Someone was doing experiments on her people. She escaped. Jinwoo stepped closer. He had always been the brave one of the group. What kind of experiments? Nira showed them her hands, with the round burn marks. They wanted to see how much pain we could feel before we stopped thinking clearly. They said we were just animals anyway. The anger that filled Jinwoo's face was immediate and fierce. Dongmin looked sick. Animals, Jinwoo said. They called you animals. Many species think this way about others, Nira explained. The strong use the weak. This is how the galaxy works. Not how Earth works, Dongmin said quietly. He had always been the gentle one, the one who fed stray cats and worried about everyone's feelings. Here, we help. You will really help me? Nira asked. Even though I am not human? Even though it might be dangerous? Of course, Jinwoo said, immediately. What kind of people would we be if we did not help someone who needed it? Nira's silver tears started flowing again. But this time, Taeho thought they might be happy tears. They helped her sit on the couch and got her water and food. She ate carefully, as if she was not used to eating much. While she ate, she told them more about her situation. Her people were called the Villani. They were scholars and scientists, peaceful by nature. They had never developed weapons or armies because they had never needed them. When the hegemony found them, they could not fight back. The hegemony is made of many species, Nira explained. They rule most of the galaxy. They say they bring order and progress, but really, they just take what they want from weaker peoples. How many of your people did they take? Taeho asked. Hundreds, maybe thousands. There are research stations everywhere. My people are used for medical testing, for studying pain responses, for seeing how our minds work when they are broken. The three roommates listened in growing horror. But you are so smart, Dongmin said. You learned Korean just from listening to our broadcasts. The Villani mind learns quickly, Nira agreed. That is why they want to study us. They think if they understand how we learn, they can make their own people smarter. By torturing you, Jinwoo said with disgust. Pain makes the mind work differently, Nira said sadly. They think suffering will reveal our secrets. That night they called So Young, Taeho's girlfriend. She was studying medicine and might know how to treat Nira's wounds properly. So Young arrived an hour later carrying her medical supplies. Like the others, she was shocked at first. But once she saw Nira's injuries, her medical training took over. These cuts are precise, she said as she cleaned and bandaged them. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to cause pain without causing death. Can you help her? Taeho asked. The wounds will heal. But the fear? So Young looked at Nira with sad eyes. That will take longer. As the night went on, they learned more about the galaxy beyond Earth. Most species did not even know humans existed. Earth was too far from the main trade routes and humans had not developed space travel yet. But there are stories, Nira said. Stories about a species that helps others without asking for payment. A species that will protect the weak, even when it costs them. Most think these are just myths. They are not myths, Jinwoo said firmly. I know this now, Nira replied. You could have walked away. You could have been afraid. Instead, you opened your home to me. Anyone would have done the same thing, Taeho said. Nira shook her head. No. In the galaxy I know, no one helps strangers. Everyone thinks only of themselves and their own kind. But humans are different. The next morning they faced a problem. How could they hide an alien in their apartment without anyone noticing? And what could they do to help her people who were still trapped? We need more help, So Young said. We need people who know about technology, about space, about how to fight something as big as this hegemony. Who would believe us? Dongmin asked. If we tell people there is an alien in our apartment, they will think we are crazy. Then we show them, Jinwoo said simply. We introduce them to Nira. Taeho thought about his engineering professor, Professor Choi. The old man had always said that the most important thing was not what you knew, but what you did with what you knew. Maybe it was time to find out if that was true. Professor Choi Byung-ho had seen many strange things in his 40 years of teaching engineering. Students trying to power their projects with hamster wheels. Young people attempting to build robots that could do their homework. Once, someone even tried to create a machine that would automatically take notes during lectures. But he had never had a student call him at home on a Saturday morning, asking if he could come to an apartment immediately because of an emergency. That could change everything. Still, Taeho had always been one of his most dedicated students. Even when he was late to class, his projects were creative and well-built. So Professor Choi agreed to come. The apartment was small and crowded when he arrived. Taeho was there with his 3 roommates and a young woman he did not recognize. They all looked nervous and excited at the same time. "Professor, thank you for coming," Taeho said. "What I am about to show you will be hard to believe." "Try me," Professor Choi said with a smile. "I have been teaching teenagers for decades. Nothing surprises me anymore." Then Nira stepped out from the bedroom. Professor Choi sat down heavily in the nearest chair. For a full minute he just stared. Nira stood quietly, letting him look. She had learned that humans needed time to process what they were seeing. "You are not human," Professor Choi finally said. "No, sir," Nira replied in her careful Korean. "I am Villani. My name is Nira." "Villani," Professor Choi repeated. "From where?" "A world many light years from here. I came here seeking help." Professor Choi looked around the room at the students. "And you decided to help her?" "Of course," Jinwoo said. "What else would we do?" "Most species would have turned me away," Nira added, "or tried to sell me to the hegemony for profit. But humans are different." For the next 2 hours, Nira told her story again. Professor Choi listened without interrupting, his engineering mind analyzing everything she said. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You said there are research stations where your people are being held," he finally said. "Yes, many of them. And these stations are in space." "Most of them, yes. Then we would need spaceships to reach them." Nira nodded sadly. "But humans do not have ships that can travel between stars." "I know this," Professor Choi smiled. "We do not have ships yet, but we have something else." "What?" Taeho asked. "We have the ability to learn, and to build, and to refuse to accept that something is impossible." He turned to Nira. "You escaped, in a ship. Where is it?" "Crashed in the mountains, badly damaged. But some parts might still work?" "Maybe. But even if you could fix it, it is only an escape pod. It cannot travel far." "Every journey begins with a single step," Professor Choi said. "Or in this case, a single working engine." That afternoon, Professor Choi made some phone calls. By evening, the apartment was filled with new people. Captain Yang Hee-jin arrived first. She was a friend of Professor Choi's from the military, someone who had always dreamed of space travel. When she saw Nira, her eyes lit up with fascination rather than fear. "A real alien," she said with wonder. "This is the greatest day in human history." Dr. Lim Jae-sung came next. He was a physicist who had spent years studying theoretical space travel. He peppered Nira with questions about her ship's engines, about how faster-than-light travel worked, about the technology that could make interstellar rescue missions possible. Then came the others. Oh Se-jun, a mechanic who could fix anything with an engine. Yoon Min-ji, a computer programmer who had always been fascinated by the possibility of alien technology. Kang Hee-young, a doctor who wanted to understand alien biology. Each person had the same reaction when they first saw Nira: shock, then amazement, then immediate acceptance. And every single one asked the same question: "How can we help?" "This is what I do not understand," Nira said as the evening went on. "In the galaxy, I know different species fear each other. They fight over resources, over territory, over who gets to be in charge, but you humans meet someone completely alien, and your first thought is to help." "Maybe that is what makes us human," So-young suggested. "Or maybe it makes you incredibly foolish," said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman in a military uniform stood there, looking stern and unimpressed. "Colonel Park Miran," Captain Yang said with surprise. "I did not expect you. Did you think word would not reach me? Half the military is talking about Yang Hee-jin making mysterious phone calls about the most important thing that has ever happened." Colonel Park walked into the room and stopped when she saw Neera. Her expression did not change. So, an alien. Yes, ma'am, Neera said quietly. And these people want to mount a rescue mission into space to save your people from something called the hegemony. That is correct. Colonel Park was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. Count me in. Captain Yang nearly fell over with surprise. Ma'am? I joined the military to protect people who could not protect themselves, Colonel Park said simply. I do not see why that should change just because those people happen to live on other planets. Over the following days, the group grew larger. Word spread carefully among trusted friends and family members. A network of people formed, all united by the simple desire to help. Neera was amazed by how quickly humans could organize. Within a week, they had teams working on different aspects of the rescue mission. Engineers studied the wreckage of her escape pod. Doctors learned about Villani physiology. Pilots began training for spaceflight. Your species does not just help individuals, Neera observed. You help as a group. You combine your different skills toward a common goal. Is that unusual? Tejo asked. Very unusual. Most species cooperate only with their own kind, and only when they have to. But humans seem to cooperate with anyone, about anything they think is important. Maybe that is our superpower, Jinwoo joked. But Neera did not laugh. You say that as a joke. But in the galaxy, cooperation across differences is the rarest and most powerful ability of all. Most species never learn it. What do the powerful species do instead? Professor Choi asked. They dominate. The strong rule the weak through fear and force. It works, but it is limited. You can only control people, not inspire them. And inspiration is more powerful than control? So Young asked. Much more powerful. A controlled person will only do what they must. An inspired person will do what they thought was impossible. As she watched the humans work together, planning an impossible rescue mission with determination and hope, Neera began to believe that maybe the stories about humanity were not myths after all. Maybe they were prophecy. 3 months later, everything was ready, or at least as ready as it could be. The crash site in the mountains had become a hidden base of operations. Oh Sejun and his team of mechanics had worked miracles with the alien technology. They had not just repaired Neera's escape pod. They had built 3 new ships using parts from Earth vehicles and alien components. The ships looked strange. Korean military helicopters combined with salvaged engines from the escape pod. Truck tires welded to spacecraft hulls. Television satellites converted into communication arrays. They were ugly and impossible, but they flew. They should not work, Dr. Lim said for the 100th time as he watched the test flights. The physics should not allow this. Human engineering does not always follow the physics textbooks, Professor Choi replied with pride. Captain Yang had trained 20 volunteers for the mission. They were soldiers, mechanics, doctors, and students. None of them had ever been in space before. But they had trained hard and learned fast. Neera had taught them everything she knew about the research station called Korthak Prime. It was one of the smaller stations, with maybe 50 hegemony guards and 300 Villani prisoners, the perfect target for their first rescue mission. Remember, Colonel Park addressed the team before launch. We are not going there to fight. We are going to save lives. If we can do that without violence, even better. But if they force us to fight? Asked Sergeant Kim Woo-bin. Then we fight, Colonel Park said grimly. But we never forget why we are there. The launch happened at dawn. The 3 ships lifted off silently from the hidden base. Neera guided them through Earth's atmosphere and into the dark space beyond. For most of the humans, it was their first time seeing Earth from space. The blue and white marble floating in the darkness took their breath away. So small, whispered Lee Na-young, one of the pilots. Our whole world looks so small, but full of people who care about strangers, Neera said. That makes it the most important place in the galaxy. The journey to Korthak Prime took 18 hours. The human ships moved slowly compared to real hegemony vessels. But they had one advantage. Nobody expected them. Earth was not supposed to have space travel. Humans were not supposed to exist outside their own solar system. When they finally saw the research station, even the bravest volunteers felt scared. Korthak Prime was massive, a dark metal structure the size of a city floating in empty space. It bristled with weapons and defensive systems. How are we supposed to get past all that? Jin Wu asked nervously. We do not go past it, Captain Yang said. We go through it. The plan was simple but dangerous. Nira would contact the station and pretend to surrender. She would claim her escape pod had been damaged and she needed help. While the hegemony guards were focused on her, the human ships would attach themselves to the station's hull like barnacles on a ship. Then, they would cut their way inside. If this goes wrong, Teho said to Nira, they will capture you again. If we do nothing, my people will suffer forever, Nira replied. Some risks are worth taking. The first part of the plan worked perfectly. The hegemony guards were excited to recapture an escaped prisoner. They brought Nira aboard in chains, never thinking to scan for other ships nearby. The human teams used plasma cutters to burn through the station's hull. They wore spacesuits that looked like they were held together with tape and prayers, but they worked. Within an hour, all 20 volunteers were inside Korthak Prime. What they found there made them understand why Nira had been so desperate to escape. The research levels were like a nightmare made real. Hundreds of Villani were kept, in small cells, many of them showing signs of terrible experiments. Some had been infected with diseases to test their immune systems. Others had parts of their brains removed to see how it affected their intelligence. The worst were the ones in the psychology section, where researchers had been breaking their minds just to see how Villani thought processes worked under extreme stress. Sergeant Kim Woo-bin had seen combat before, but this was different. These were not enemy soldiers. These were innocent people who had been turned into test subjects. How can anyone do this? He whispered to his squad. The same way people always do terrible things, replied Dr. Kang, who was treating injured prisoners. They convince themselves that their victims are not really people. The rescue operation was supposed to be quiet and careful, but when the human team saw what was being done to the Villani prisoners, quiet went out the airlock. Yoon Minji hacked the station systems and opened every cell door at once. Oh Sejun and his mechanics disabled the security systems. The medical team, led by Dr. Kang, began treating the most badly injured prisoners. And when the hegemony guards finally realized what was happening and came to stop them, they ran into something they had never faced before: humans protecting people they cared about. The guards were professional soldiers, well-trained and well-equipped. But they were used to fighting for territory or resources or power. The humans were fighting for something different. They were fighting to protect innocent lives, and that made them fierce in a way the guards could not understand. Sergeant Kim led his squad in impossible charges down narrow corridors, never retreating when Villani prisoners were behind them. Engineer Seo Junho kept the ship's systems running while under fire, rerouting power and life support with bullets flying around him. Pilot Lee Na-young flew their damaged ships through combat maneuvers that should have torn them apart, but somehow kept them flying through pure determination. But their greatest weapon was not their courage or their improvised technology. It was their refusal to abandon anyone. When Private Han Dong-soo was wounded while protecting a group of young Villani, his squad members carried him and the aliens to safety together. When Dr. Kang ran out of medical supplies, she shared her own blood with injured prisoners who had compatible biology. When the main escape route was blocked, Captain Yang led half the team back into the station to find another way out, even though it meant risking capture. The hegemony guards had never seen anything like it. In their experience, soldiers retreated when the mission became too dangerous. But these humans seemed to get more determined the more difficult things became. What kind of species fights harder to save strangers than to save themselves? One guard asked his commander. The commander had no answer. In the end, the humans saved 247 Villani prisoners from Korthak Prime. They lost one ship and had 8 wounded. Team members, but everyone made it home alive. As they flew back toward Earth with their rescued passengers, Nira looked at the sleeping Villani around her. Many of them would need months of medical treatment and psychological healing, but they were free. "Your people saved us," she said to Tejo. "But more than that, they showed us something we thought was impossible." "What is that?" "That someone could care about us just because we needed help. Not because we were useful, or profitable, or powerful. Just because we were suffering, and that was enough." Tejo looked out at the stars, thinking about Earth waiting ahead of them. Such a small planet in such a vast galaxy. But maybe Nira was right. Maybe caring about strangers was the most powerful force in the universe. They were about to find out. News of the Korthak Prime rescue spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The rescued Villani had hidden recording devices in their clothes, small instruments they had built secretly in their cells. When the humans freed them, those devices captured everything. The terrible conditions in the research station, the experiments being done on innocent people, and most importantly, the humans risking their own lives to save complete strangers. Nira helped transmit these recordings to Villani communities across the galaxy. Within days, the footage was spreading from species to species, planet to planet. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On the Althari homeworld, the ruling council called for an emergency session. The Althari had always prided themselves on being civilized, but they had ignored the hegemony's research programs because those programs provided medical advances that helped their own people. "How can we call ourselves civilized?" asked Council Leader Vorth, "when we allowed this to happen in our name?" The footage hit the Quelan Republic even harder. The Quelan had fought a war against the hegemony 50 years earlier, and lost. Since then they had accepted hegemony rule because they thought resistance was impossible. But the recording showed something they had never imagined. A species that barely had space travel, mounting a successful raid against a heavily defended research station, not for conquest or profit, but simply to help others. "If humans can do this," said General Kess to the Quelan Parliament, "what excuse do we have for doing nothing?" The recordings spread to oppressed species throughout the galaxy. The Thylorian refugees who had been driven from their homeworld. The Mecton slave laborers who worked in hegemony mines. The Zephyrian political prisoners who had been locked away for opposing hegemony rule. All of them saw the same thing. Humans had proven that the hegemony could be fought. More than that, they had proven that someone cared about the victims. Back on Earth, the aftermath of the rescue was chaotic. The returned ships had been spotted by satellites and civilian astronomers. The Korean government was asking awkward questions. And 247 alien refugees needed food, shelter, and medical care. But somehow everything worked out. Dr. Lim had prepared for this. He had contacted scientists and government officials around the world, people he trusted to handle the truth responsibly. When the time came, Earth's leaders were ready. The official announcement came from the United Nations in New York. Secretary General Maria Santos stood before the world press and calmly explained that humanity had made contact with intelligent alien life, had learned about suffering in the galaxy, and had chosen to help. "We are not the strongest species," she said. "We are not the smartest or the most advanced, but we have chosen to be the ones who care about others. Today, Earth opens its doors to any being in the galaxy who needs sanctuary from oppression." The reaction on Earth was mixed. Some people were afraid. Some were angry that the government had acted without asking permission, but most were proud. Within days, support centers for alien refugees were being built in dozens of countries. Volunteers lined up to help with construction, medical care, and translation services. Schools began teaching basic galactic languages. Scientists shared their knowledge freely with anyone who wanted to learn. Tejo found himself at the center of it all. As the first human to help an alien, he had become a symbol of Earth's new role in the galaxy. Politicians wanted to meet him. Reporters wanted to interview him. Scientists wanted to study his decision-making process. But he was more interested in the letters. Hundreds of them arrived every day. Messages from across the galaxy, transmitted through networks that Nira and the other rescued Villani had taught Earth's communication specialists to access. Some were from Villani families thanking him for bringing their loved ones home. Others were from species he had never heard of, asking if Earth would really help anyone who needed it. Many were from beings still trapped in hegemony research facilities begging for rescue. "We cannot save them all," Colonel Park said during one of their planning meetings. "We do not have enough ships or people or resources." "Then we build more ships," Professor Choi replied. "We train more people. We find more resources." "And if the hegemony decides Earth is a threat and attacks us?" Captain Yang asked. It was Nira who answered. "Then other species will defend you." The recordings from Korthak Prime changed everything. For the first time in centuries, oppressed peoples have hope. They will not let the hegemony destroy that hope. She was right. 3 weeks after the Korthak Prime rescue, the first alien ships arrived at Earth. Not hegemony ships, but vessels from the Althari Collective, carrying supplies and volunteers. "We want to help," said Ambassador Kren as she stepped off her ship. "Your species has shown us what we should have been doing all along." More ships followed. Quilan military vessels offering to escort human rescue missions, Thylorian refugee, ships asking for permission to establish a permanent base on Earth's moon. Mechtan engineers bringing advanced technology to help build better rescue ships. Within 2 months, Earth had become the center of something unprecedented, a galactic alliance, based not on conquest or trade but on mutual aid and protection. The hegemony tried to respond with threats and sanctions. They cut off trade with any species that cooperated with humans. They moved their research stations to more heavily defended locations. They even sent a diplomatic mission to Earth, demanding that the refugee program be shut down. The human response was delivered by President Kim of South Korea, speaking on behalf of Earth's unified government. "We reject your demands," she said simply. "Every sentient being has the right to life, liberty, and protection from harm. We will continue to offer sanctuary to anyone who needs it, and we will continue to oppose those who profit from suffering." The hegemony diplomat was reportedly shocked by this response. In their experience, primitive species were supposed to be intimidated by superior technology and military power. But humans, it seemed, had a different definition of strength. As the months passed, more rescue missions launched from Earth. Human teams now working alongside alien allies, freed prisoners from research stations throughout the galaxy. Each success inspired more species to join the alliance. The network that had started with a college student helping one desperate alien had become a galactic movement for freedom and justice. But the most important moment came 6 months after Korthak Prime, when Nira received a message that made her cry tears of joy. "What is it?" Taiho asked. "A transmission from my homeworld," she said through her happiness. "My people have been freed. All of them. A coalition fleet of 12 different species attacked the main research facility and liberated every Villani prisoner." "That is wonderful," Taiho said. "You do not understand," Nira replied. "This coalition exists because of what you did. Because one human chose to help one alien, the entire galaxy is changing." Taiho looked out the window of their new headquarters, watching human and alien engineers working together to build the next generation of rescue ships. So Young was there, now head of the Interspecies Medical Corps. Jin Wu and Dong Min were training alien volunteers in human cooperation techniques. It had all started with a simple choice in a university courtyard. Help a stranger in need or walk away. "I guess sometimes small actions have big consequences," he said. "The best actions always do," Nira replied. 5 years had passed since that autumn day when Taiho first heard Nira's desperate plea for help. The galaxy was a very different place now. Earth had become the heart of what was officially called the Haven Alliance, but which most beings simply called the Shield. Over 300 species had joined, united by a simple principle: the strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. The old Seoul National University campus had been transformed into the Alliance headquarters. Where students once hurried to engineering classes, delegates from across the galaxy now gathered to coordinate rescue missions and plan aid programs. Taiho walked through the familiar courtyards, but everything was different now. The trees were the same, but alien plants from dozens of worlds grew alongside them. The buildings looked similar, but they housed translation centers, refugee processing facilities, and interspecies medical clinics. He paused at the spot where he had first met Nira, now marked with a simple plaque that read, "Here began the alliance, when one person chose to help another." "Remembering old times?" asked a voice behind him. Taeho turned to see Jin Woo approaching. His old roommate now served as director of volunteer coordination, managing the thousands of humans and aliens who worked together on rescue operations. "Hard to believe it all started here," Taeho said. "With you dropping your books to help a stranger," Jin Woo added with a smile. "Professor Kim still talks about that day. Says it was the first time in 40 years that a student had a good excuse for missing lab." They walked together toward the main administration building. The corridors buzzed with activity. Humans worked alongside Villani scientists, Althari diplomats, Quelan military officers, and dozens of other species. What amazed visitors was not just that they all worked together, but how naturally they did it. Humans had taught the galaxy something that had been forgotten for centuries. Cooperation was not just possible between different species. It was more effective than domination. In the main conference room, the daily alliance briefing was beginning. Taeho took his seat as Earth's primary ambassador, a title he still found strange. Next to him sat Nira, now serving as the alliance's chief refugee coordinator. "Status report on current operations," requested Colonel Park, who had been promoted to alliance military commander. Captain Yang, now an admiral commanding a fleet of ships from 50 different worlds, stood to speak. "Operation Sanctuary 7 was successful. We freed 200 prisoners from 3 research stations in the hegemony border systems. No casualties on our side, and the enemy offered minimal resistance. They are retreating faster now," observed Admiral Kess of the Keelan fleet. "The hegemony knows they cannot win direct confrontations against our combined forces. But they still control much of the galaxy," warned Ambassador Kren of the Althari. "And they are adapting, moving their operations to secret locations, making it harder for us to find victims who need rescue." Dr. Lim, now head of Alliance Technology Development, nodded grimly. "Our intelligence networks are good, but the hegemony has centuries of experience hiding their activities. We need to be patient." "Patience is hard when we know people are suffering," said Dr. Kang, who ran the Alliance medical programs. "Yesterday, I treated a group of Mekton refugees who had been used for mining equipment testing. Some of them will never fully recover." The room fell quiet. Even after 5 years and hundreds of successful rescues, the reality of what they were fighting against never became easier to accept. "We have other news," Nira said, breaking the silence. "Good news this time." She activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A star map appeared, showing the current territory controlled by different factions in the galaxy. 6 months ago, the hegemony controlled 60% of inhabited systems, she explained. Today, they control less than 40%. More importantly, their recruitment has dropped by 70%. Young beings from hegemony species are refusing to join their military or research programs. "Why?" asked Taeho. "Because they have seen the recordings." Nira smiled. "Not just from Korthak Prime, but from all our rescue missions. They know what their governments have been doing in their name, and many of them want no part of it." Admiral Yang leaned forward. "Are you saying the hegemony is collapsing from within?" "Not collapsing," Nira corrected, "but changing. There are reform movements on dozens of hegemony worlds now. Political parties calling for an end to the research programs. Military officers refusing to follow orders they consider immoral. The humans taught us something important," added Admiral Kess. "They showed us that ordinary people have power when they choose to use it. That lesson is spreading throughout hegemony territory." After the briefing, Taeho walked with Nira to the refugee center. It was built where the old student dormitories used to be, but it was 10 times larger now. Beings from across the galaxy lived there temporarily, while they decided where to make their new homes. They passed a playground where human children played with young aliens of a dozen different species. A Villani child was teaching a human girl, how to solve complex mathematical puzzles. Two Thylorian boys were showing a human boy how to build sculptures that floated in the air. "Look at them," Nira said with wonder. "They do not see differences. They just see friends." "Maybe that is how it should be everywhere," Tejo replied. "Maybe that is how it will be someday." They continued to the medical center, where So Young was finishing her rounds. She had become one of the galaxy's leading experts on interspecies medicine, but she still took time to personally visit the most seriously injured refugees. "How are they today?" Nira asked about a group of recent rescues. "Better," So Young said with satisfaction. "The nightmares are less frequent. The physical wounds are healing well. And yesterday, one of them smiled for the first time since we brought them here." "Healing takes time," Nira observed. "But it does happen," So Young agreed. "Especially when people know they are safe and cared for." That evening, there was a celebration in the main plaza. It was the anniversary of the first successful rescue mission to Korthak Prime. Representatives from every Alliance species had gathered to mark the occasion. Tejo found himself standing at a podium, looking out at thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds. 5 years ago, he had been a nervous engineering student. Now he was supposed to give a speech to leaders of galactic civilizations. "5 years ago," he began, "I was just trying not to be late for class. I had no idea that stopping to help one person would lead to all of this." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "I have learned many things since then," he continued. "I have learned that the galaxy is vast and full of wonders. I have learned that there are beings of incredible intelligence and ability among the stars. But most importantly, I have learned that no matter how different we look or where we come from, we all want the same basic things." He paused, looking at Nira in the front row. She nodded encouragingly. "We want to be safe. We want to be free. We want to protect the people we care about. And we want to know that if we are ever in trouble, someone will help us." The crowd was completely silent now. The hegemony forgot this truth. They thought power meant the ability to hurt others without consequence. But real power comes from the ability to help others, even when it costs us something. Applause began to build across the plaza. Today, the Alliance protects over 2 billion beings who were once victims of oppression. We have shut down hundreds of research facilities. We have freed thousands of prisoners. But our greatest victory is not what we have destroyed. It is what we have built. The applause grew louder. We have built a galaxy where being different is not a reason for fear, where being weak does not mean being abandoned, where calling for help will bring help no matter who you are or where you come from. Now the entire crowd was on their feet cheering. This is the legacy of everyone who chose to help instead of turning away. Everyone who risked their safety to protect strangers. Everyone who believed that caring about others makes us stronger, not weaker. As the celebration continued into the night, Tejo found himself back in the courtyard where everything had started. Nira joined him there, as he had known she would. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had walked away that day?" she asked. "Sometimes," Tejo admitted. "But then I think about all the people who are free now because we chose to help. All the children who will grow up without fear. All the species that will never again have to face oppression alone. The galaxy is safer because of what humans taught us," Nira said. "But humans are also different because of what the galaxy taught them." "How so?" "You learned that kindness is not weakness, that standing up for others makes you stronger, that the bonds between different peoples can be stronger than the bonds within one people." Tejo looked up at the stars, visible now through the dome that covered the headquarters complex. Somewhere out there, Alliance ships were conducting new rescue missions. Somewhere else, former hegemony worlds were holding their first free elections. And in countless places, beings who had once lived in fear were learning to hope again. "You asked me to shield you," he said to Nira. "But in the end, we all became shields for each other, and that," Nira replied, "is the most human thing of all." Third year, two friends stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars that no longer seem